Let me introduce you to Kara. So, in the past, Kara enjoyed smoking cannabis occasionally, just for fun. But after her partner unexpectedly passed away, things changed. And since then, she's been using it more often, especially on days when the anxiety and the pain won't go away. And after some time, she found herself needing it just to get through the day. So people use cannabis for a variety of reasons. For some, it's just to relax and unwind after a long day. And over the past decade or so, since widespread legalization of marijuana in the United States, cannabis use has increased significantly. And some states have a lot of dispensaries that have popped up recently, and cannabis use has been quite common over the years. And in dispensaries, you can find a number of different interesting products. So not just the flowers that you might be used to seeing, but you can also find edibles and extracts and oils and all types of different products, including cannabis-infused drinks. And with this rise in access to products as well as just overall access to cannabis, there's been an increase in the use of cannabis over the past decade among adults in the United States. So as of 2022, about 1 in 4 individuals report using cannabis at least once over the past decade. So if you look to the left or to the right or in front of you, chances are one of you have used cannabis pretty recently. So some of the questions that we're trying to address in science are what are the potential benefits and risks of cannabis use? And how much use would be considered too much? So one particular group that may end up using cannabis more frequently are individuals with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. So PTSD affects about 20 million people in the United States, and that number represents survivors of violence, accidents, and other traumatic events. And while the trauma may have occurred in the past, the effects are still long-lasting. And that can be through re-experiencing emotions and memories and flashbacks and overwhelming emotions and physical responses in response to these memories. And some individuals with PTSD report that using cannabis helps alleviate those symptoms. And it does so by reducing the emotional intensity of these memories and calming the nervous system. So how exactly does it do that? So this is what happens after you use cannabis. So THC, the main chemical that's found in cannabis, enters the bloodstream after you either smoke or ingest it in some form. And the THC ends up entering the bloodstream and traveling to the brain. And there, the THC attaches to proteins on brain cells called cannabinoid receptors. And these receptors are part of our body's natural system that's involved in regulating stress and emotions. And these proteins are located on the surface of brain cells. And when THC activates these proteins, it reduces the activity of these brain cells. And one region of our brain that has a bunch of these receptors is a small almond-shaped region that plays a big role in processing threat and fear. And this region is called the amygdala. And in PTSD, the amygdala can become overactive in response to triggers, and even if there's no real threat. And so when THC binds to cannabinoid receptors in the amygdala, it helps quiet this region down and make people feel less reactive and more calm. So in our lab, we're interested in understanding whether there are potential benefits or potential risks to cannabis use, and what's the balance between the two. So we conduct human behavioral studies where, for this example, we recruit participants that are interested in volunteering, and the volunteers partake in a study where they receive a very small dose of THC or a placebo pill that contains no active drug. After they're given the drug or placebo pill in the lab, We wait for a bit for the drug to kick in, and we show them video clips of memories, of interviews that are made to jog their memories of personalized stressful memories. And from there, we're able to see how THC affects both the emotional responses to these stress memories as well as the physical stress responses. So we look for changes in heart rate as well as the levels of the stress hormone cortisol. So some of the big questions that we're interested in addressing are: how exactly does THC affect these emotional and physical responses to stress memories? And just as importantly, who may be experiencing these effects the strongest? For example, are people with higher baseline levels of anxiety to begin with more likely to feel these effects the strongest? And are there individuals who may find relief while others may feel nothing? And do some people feel even more anxious after taking THC? And what are the underlying factors that are contributing to this? Answering these types of questions are important in not only understanding how cannabis affects the brain and the body, but also who might end up using it more often as a coping mechanism. Because while cannabis can offer temporary relief, it also carries some real risks. So frequent use, especially daily, can lead to things like tolerance, which requires more cannabis in order to feel the same effects. And some individuals can also become psychologically dependent, feeling as though they need it in order to get through the day. So what do we need? So we need more solid scientific studies to examine all of these effects of the drug. So cannabis research has been difficult to conduct over the years because researchers have faced a lot of legal and logistical barriers that have just made it difficult to conduct these types of studies. And so we need more well-controlled, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. So what exactly does this mean? So we need studies that have a placebo group where some participants are given a pill that contains no drug, and this is essential to be able to compare the effects of the drug against. And we also need studies that incorporate double-blind design. And what that means essentially is just that the participant and the researcher that's interacting with the participant are blinded or don't know what the drug is that that person is given. And that's important because it helps reduce expectations and expectancy effects, which have been shown to strongly influence our study results. And so these types of studies are really needed in the field in order to understand the effects of cannabis better. And in our lab, we run a bunch of these different types of studies using these well-controlled study designs. And the research study that I just talked about is a currently ongoing study, and it's a paid study, and we're always looking for more volunteers. So if you are interested, or if you're interested in any of the other research that we have going on in the lab, I would love to connect with you. And so feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to chat more. And so with that, I would like to thank you for your time.